How's everybody doing tonight? Let's see, get my chat going. Struggle streaming as always. Give me a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Happy hump day. That's fine. Let me check down my LinkedIn. No, I'll be struggle streaming on LinkedIn, man. I got to figure out what's going on. Let's see. Let's get on my LinkedIn real quick. Give me 1 in the chat if you can hear me. Oh, man. Let's see. Okay. I'll get with him in a little bit. Let's see. Let's see. I'm over there. Let's see. About to get started. Once again, I'm struggle streaming on LinkedIn. Let me see. See if I can see what's going on. Let's get it going. You know how we do it. Okay, Axel. Glad you could join me. Dave W. Checking everybody out. So you see it. We're going to dive into it. Of course, we're going to do the NIST stuff first, but that's actually a NIST 800-53 BDI infrastructure on the screen. Got your client, got your firewalls, getting into your cloud infrastructure. You see it. Virtual desktop interface is BDI. That's the tier. Then you see a virtual desktop, virtual profile, virtual appliance, virtual disk, and the hypervisor. Managed devices. So you see, shout out to Before the Billions. Let's see. Morrison in the house. Appreciate you. Shout out to my man Before the Billions. So I'm sure you saw the thumbnail. So let's see how the recruiter tried to get me to commit a felony crime. Shout out to the recruiter. He was struggling. He didn't know security. So we're gonna get to him real quick. Let's see. Let's get to. Let's look at that one. Yeah, I didn't bring that up. Let's look at a quick video. Let me cut and paste that out real quick. Get that going. Get that on the screen. Yeah, that's it. Super short. So. We're going to see if that tab is sharing. Let's look at this quick video where everybody's following it. Shout out to Jonathan R. Shout out to Brother Michael. Shout out to Jonathan R. Shout out to King 318. Let's see. I got too many screens going on. I think, is this the one sharing? Yep, we're sharing that one.
The way people work and interact is changing. Employees and contractors are increasingly working remotely, but they still need secure and reliable access.
Shout out to that remote work. I know a lot of people hating on remote work. A lot of people, I'm going to do a video. I think it was Jamie Dimon and AWS trying to get you to come back in an office. PBO is never coming back to the office.
To their desktops and applications. Customers are enabling this access with Amazon Workspaces. As a managed, secure, desktop-as-a-service solution, you can provision.
I need y'all to go check out Person Center Cyber. I need y'all to go join her. She definitely gonna join me when I do my little classes, because I'm gonna do some policy. I need her to help me with my policies. My policies be a little bland, you know. She be adding a little professionalism and a little flair to PBO's policies. I'll be a little bland, so we definitely gonna get her in the membership helping PBO out. So definitely gonna use her skill set. Shout out to the policy queen. Go definitely check her out, fellas. Go give her a join, y'all. Go give her a join.
Vision for just one or go up to tens of thousands of Windows or Linux desktops for remote and contingent workers around the globe. Amazon Workspaces provides each user with access to secure storage in the cloud.
So just a quick, and we're going to show this a couple times. Virtual desktop is how you can use your own private computer, go through the virtual desktop in Azure or AWS. That's going to put you in sandbox, and we're going to drill down into this. It's going to give you your FISMA requirements, your DoD requirements, your IRS, FERPA. It's going to make sure your sandbox is secure so you can do that level of work using your home computer, right? It's called agency owned. You saw it, BYOD, or contractors' computers, and we're going to break down each one of those. So that's why we're actually talking about the virtual desktop, virtual interface. Once again, it's a way to do government work using your own computers, and you can be compliant. So,
and no data is stored on the local device, ensuring your organization's information is kept safe and protected. Your remote workers can use Amazon Workspaces with no complex licensing and no long-term contracts, making it.
Everybody know I'm an AWS guy, so that's why we doing the AWS Amazon Workspace. Once again, Azure's got theirs, Google got theirs. Once again, I'm an AWS guy, so that's kind of why I kind of focus on that cloud.
Getting started, simple. If you don't have an AWS account, you'll need to set one up before you can launch this service. Once you have your AWS account, begin by opening Amazon Workspaces from the AWS Management Console and click Get Started Now. Launch your quick setup and select the bundle that best suits your needs. Select users, set up a password, and download the client. Once the setup is complete, sign in and your end users can start using their desktops right away to get their job done securely. Help your remote workers access a cloud desktop anywhere, anytime, and from any device with Amazon Workspaces.
It's your friend's birthday. How do you...
So let's get back to the slides. You know, as an ex-professor, I'm always slide showing it. So let's get on back to it. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about and how did we get there once again. And so we're going to get to it. So long story short, I was reached out to by a headhunter recruiter, and they said, well, if you have a government computer that's already certified to do that type of work, we want to hire you for a short-term assignment, but we want you to use your government process laptop. I'm like, that would be a no. Even if I would do it, which I don't think I would want to work for that company, because he showed me that he doesn't know anything about computers. So you see it in the red. I do a lot of IRS work, which sits on top of NIST 800-53. So it says IRS must administer the disclosure provision of the IRS code. I'm going to skip around a little bit. The IRS defines and protects confidential relationship between the taxpayer and the IRS, making it a crime to violate this confidence. The RC 7213 prescribes criminal penalties, making it a felony offense for federal and state employees and others to illegally disclose federal tax returns and return information, which is called FTI. So how is that a felony? If I'm working on Indiana's system and I somehow put Ohio's information on the Indiana system, Indiana gave me their computer to run Indiana workloads, right? So if I run an Ohio workload or a California workload, I am disclosing FTI information to a different government agency than that computer was assigned to, right? So I think that would be a felony. So me probably overreacting, but PBO doesn't want to get in any trouble, right? So that's what I thought he was talking. And we're going to get into some more of these regulations, right? Punishable by fines, imprisonment, or both. PB a little too old to be going to jail. He ain't trying to do that, right? So let's keep going. I cut up some other little factors in there. Once again, disclosure of return information, federal employees and other, it shall be unlawful for any officer or employees of the United States or any person described, any former officer or employee to willfully to disclose to any person except as an authorized in the title and returns or return information. So once again, if I'm working on Indiana system and I give that to another system, right, I am commingling work, right? So that's a $5,000 or imprisonment or both, right? So once again, PBO is trying not to go to jail for a little bit of money. So why do I bring this up? This lets you know recruiters and even a lot of security people really doesn't know what that line is and how that line works, right? So I politely told him, I think you breaking a federal crime, and here's the documentation to prove that to you, right? Let's see. Sounds like somebody trying to set you up. I agree. I don't think he was trying to set me up. I think he was trying to greedy and trying to, skirt the system. Because when you do try to get on a federal client and get a federal system, Guillermo, it takes forever, right? But that's why we're going to talk about how will we set up a BDI so we can jumpstart that process without being in violation of sharing. So that's where the virtual desktop comes in. That's what we're going to talk about. And two is we're going to talk about NIST 800-53, IRS Pub 1075, and what is the requirements for you to set up a virtual desktop. But you're right, Guillermo. I don't think he was trying to set me up, but he was setting me up, right? But that lets you know a lot of these people, and he's supposed to be a security recruiter. That company's supposed to be doing security. But the manager in charge of that was telling me to do that. I'm like, that's a no, player. That's a no. That's a big no. Let's keep rolling, right? So once again, it's the last one. It should be unlawful for any person not described in paragraph to willfully disclose to any persons except authorized in the title. Once again, that was the $5,000 fine. And this is what I think he was doing on those systems he didn't think about. You're commingling data at a multi-purpose facility results into security and privacy risks that must be addressed. If the agency shares physical or computer facilities with other agency departments or individuals not authorized to have FTI, strict physical and system controls must be maintained and prevent unauthorized disclosure of this information, right? So theoretically, he wanted me to commingle data on that laptop from two separate clients. Once again, that's a big no-no, right? So we got to watch these people, right? So PBO wants to make sure he doesn't get in trouble, and he doesn't, and I doesn't, and we doesn't, right? So we just showed that one, and we're gonna dig a little more into their AWS has their virtual desktop. It's called Amazon Workspace. They actually have a thin client that you can use at home that's stripped down. It's pretty much like a Google system. We're gonna look at that too and figure out once again how do we use that. I think it's just $144. Set up a BDI inside AWS and be able to do that type of work without commingling and without getting ourselves in trouble. Shout out to Portfolio O for joining us. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight once again, so we don't get ourselves in trouble and get him into trouble, right? So once again, that's a standard setup. Once again, that's for this 800-53, specifically for the IRS. That's kind of what they want you to do. You got your client tier 1. You got your access tier. We're going to drill down to what those checks are. You're going through your firewall. You got your web interface. Then in the cloud, you got your virtual desktop. You're in different data centers. Hopefully you have DR and failover if your one desktop goes down. Then inside that virtual desktop tier number 3, you got your virtual desktop, your virtual profile, your virtual applications, your virtual disk, and we know everybody's using probably a hypervisor. That's kind of the big dog. Even in the cloud, people still start using a hypervisor. Then in the cloud, right, usually I have a management desktop and an access policy server. Can you download stuff? Can you upload stuff? What type of controls can you do on their virtual desktop? And once again, part of GRC and this, we're going to talk about those requirements so they can do federal work, FISMA, once again, IRS Pub 1075, that type of work. So we can do that type of work once again and get paid for it without going to jail and doing a felony. Shout out to Sharon K for joining us. So we keep going over that scenario. So that's where the felony came from. Shout out to Morris. I don't know if he was trying to set me up. I just think he wasn't as savvy in the security game, Guillermo. We gonna keep throwing him that bone. We just gonna say he wasn't savvy in the game like that. So once again, let's keep rolling. We're gonna go through the BDI and see. We're going to dig on that at the end. I just kind of want to show you what the AWS set up from an architecture standpoint. We want to make sure we're architecture sound, what we're reviewing, once again, from a NIST 800-53. So, and at the end, we're going to dig down a little bit more into that and talk about that. So your user goes to the internet. You're up at the public AWS. They give you authentication and session control. You stream your data over to your workspace. See, each one of those workspaces are sandboxes. So I can have 3 separate clients up in AWS. They're not commingled. I got the right security, and everybody can gracefully make money without creating a felony. Right? So this is kind of what I want to set up over the next month. I think I'm going to purchase their thin client, which looks like a cube. We're going to show that at the end, the AWS cube. It's about the size of my hand. Once again, it's kind of like Google. So all your access and all your workspace and all your windows and your applications are up there in Amazon Workspace up in the cloud. It shows your Active Directory services. We know what that is. Got to make sure who you are. Hopefully get some MFA in there, some multi-factor authentication in there. Make sure we all locked down, doing what we do. So we could talk a little bit about that. Those are endpoint. Then you got your NAT gateway. Going to your VPC if you want to have some documents, standard templates that you want to upload in your workspace. Obviously, you want to have some virus control, looking at those documents when you upload and scan them, make sure you don't have any malware. But that's the architecture of what that will look like in an AWS cloud. So let's keep that rolling. You know how we do it. If you got any questions, put them in the chat, and I'll get to them. Could be tech, could be cybersecurity. Doesn't matter. I'll pivot and come back, right? I've been doing this a long time. Let me see if I got any questions in LinkedIn. I'm struggle stream. Oh, uh-oh. Let me see. Got it. My fault. I got LinkedIn going too. I don't know if y'all can hear that. Let's keep rolling. Struggle streaming. Let's keep going. Check on my LinkedIn a little bit, trying to do it. So we're gonna go through it. So you see that I did it from the IRS. Once again, that's the 100. So AC3 is access enforcement. We're gonna dig down on what that is. But once again, this is the NIST 800-53 document. Authorization for logical access to information. We saw that AD. That's gonna give us a lot of that. I put that in red. User having accounts with administrator access privileges may access those accounts only from an agency owned or an authorized computer or VDI, which what we just saw. The supplemental guidance, a key intent is to prohibit personally owned computers or public kiosks, library systems from being used from remote administrator access. If individuals with administrator rights require email or internet access beyond local boundaries, one alternative would be to issue separate non-privileged accounts per effective for that person, for that purpose. For consideration of that section, administration rights or those that allow for installation or configuration or software agency access, receiving or process, storing or accessing, protecting or transmitting FTI/PII. Right, so that tells you if you're not using a VDI, they really want you to use agency-owned equipment, right? Meaning the government should ship you a computer. And I work remote. I got shipped a computer so I could do that type of work because they want to make sure that security on that laptop is up to the level of that organization, right? So once again, mobile devices that are part of BYOD, that's bring your own devices. Talked about FIPS 140-2, validated encryption. Authorized the connection of the mobile device, which is considered a laptop, to your organization. Full device and container-based encryption. Employ full device encryption using the latest, once again, FIPS 140-4. If you're not, you need a POEM, which is basically a schedule finding must be documented and tracked when no such encryption technology solutions are available to address that specific device. If there's no encryption for that specific device, you're not using it on my network. So, right? So, once again, I do DoD government work. If there's no encryption for that device, you're not using that device. And 9 times out of 10, we're blocking iPads, many computers, phones. If you're not coming from a laptop, specifically from a MAC or IP address, hopefully we're using reserved IP addresses for Windows, or we're using static IP addresses for Linux. We really want to lock it down to that specific device. Let's see what my man Guillermo's asking down here. Does this apply to DoD members who access their systems for a non-DoD? Yes. Yes. The question is, 9 times out of 10, you wouldn't access it from a non-DoD computer. DoD is usually going to make you do a agency-owned device. When I worked at DoD, we shipped you out a laptop. So these are actually the new requirements from NIST 800- revision 5. I think it came out a year and a half ago, Guillermo. So I think they're loosening it a little bit because with BDI and it said contractor owned. But to be honest, all the organization I worked for DoD Finance, which is DFIS. We are always shipping out a computer. I worked as a contractor. I worked on nothing but DoD laptops and DoD equipment. I never logged into a DoD network from a non-DoD computer. Great question, Guillermo. Let's keep it moving. Offshore, all right, doing international travel, batteries of agency managed or bring your own devices must be removed from the battery-powered mobile device and stored separately from the device when left unattended. The SIM cards must be removed and stored separately from the device, then employ them when using non-U.S. customs. Once agency employees return from abroad, it's important for the agency to ensure continued security of the network where the FTI resides or PI. Agency must sanitize all devices taken abroad prior to allow them to connect to their trusted networks. Additionally, agency must disable wireless connectivity option until the device has been sanitized and may wish to provide additional security training for employees traveling abroad, right? So basically, when you come back in, we erasing your device. So a lot of times is even if you had a DoD laptop, we had stripped down versions of DoD laptops that had SD RAM, really no NIC card, minimal stuff. So when you come back, a lot of times, that's one time we really want you to use the iPad because we're going to actually degauss it and erase it, right? Then reinstall everything. No, specifically for everybody, not just soldiers, Guillermo. I wasn't a soldier. I was I was an Oracle DBA back then, and I did web stuff. I did Apache and Tomcat. Now that's for everybody, Guillermo. And even our soldiers, when we had guys, they were doing some counting over there in the desert. They had DoD equipment, Guillermo. The guys I knew from once again DFIS, which is the financial wing of that. So once again, when you take your laptop out of the country, it's getting erased when it comes back in, right? Standard stuff. So this is what I was talking about, right? Using a virtual desktop interface. BDI provides users access to enterprise resources, including a virtual desktop from locations both internal to and external to the agency. In a BDI environment, a user can access FTI PI by connecting to a virtual workstation in a vendor-specific agent connection client or through an internal browser for practically any mobile device for the internet access. Using BDI environment is the only manner in which agency may authorize the users to leverage personally owned devices to access or manage information systems that receive, process, access, protect, or transmit FTI or PII. FTI, once again, is federal tax information. That was my specialty for the last 10 years, right? So FTI or PII from a federal system, from a personal device, the only way you can access that is really to a virtual desktop BDI. The most popular ones, of course, is we're going to talk about AWS. and the other one is Azure's, right? Um, Both of those are set up and can be hardened once again to do FISMA work, DoD work, IRS work, any of that three-letter agency work. Those two can specifically be hardened to do that type of work, right? So once again, what's up, Ty? So once again, remember the headhunter slash recruiter wanted me to use a government laptop to share it to do that type of work, right? Trying to get me to create a felony. The answer to that would be no. So the proper way for us to do that from my personal laptop to be able to do that type of work, we're going to dig into a little more to be to VDI through a virtual desktop infrastructure, right? We looked at the what the NIST was recommending, and we're going to look at it again from a setup. And once again, we're going to go through hardening in each one of those layers, right? We saw layer 1, 2, and 3. What checks do we need to have done in each one of those layers, right? Once again, that's NIST and GRC. A lot of times, the IT doesn't know the specific checks or the requirements to do federal work. So that's kind of where I come in. Being a SME is I need you to do these specific checks in this environment once again, so we can become compliant or get certifications to do that type of work. A lot of times, it's called 3PO. These are outside auditors that's going to come in and check your setup to make sure it's set up securely, once again, to do that type of work. Use of external systems. The IRS Office of Safeguards allow connection from external systems only in the event the agencies configure a virtual desktop solution to receive, secure, and manage remote connections. Once again, the IRS, any of those three-letter agencies, is going to want you to have, once again, the VDI, virtual desktop interface, and you have to receive, secure, and manage remote connections, right, to make that secure. And once again, we know the hackers are out there trying to get to you. So the virtual desktop provides user access, once again, to enterprise resources, including virtual desktop, by connecting to vendor-specific connection clients through an internal browser for practically any mobile device. Once again, process, store, access, and protect. Once again, that's the layout we're going to start digging down to. You got your client, which is your personal laptop, BYOD. You're going to log into the access tier, your firewalls, your web interfaces. You see your internal networking, or a lot of times that could be in the cloud in your AWS Azure. Those are your data center with your virtual desktop and virtual configurations. Each one of those configurations could be a separate client that you could be working on. And once again, virtual desktop, virtual profile, virtual application, virtual disk, your virtual applications. Of course, we probably be doing the O365. We'd be doing spreadsheets. A lot of times we'll be using Teams between our virtual setup and the client's on side of their virtual setup. We can exchange documents between there. Once again, we're securely in a sandbox in the data center. Or once again, that data center could be AWS or Azure. So let's see. Shout out to Game Over. Let's see, Guillermo. Are they considering Microsoft Teams as a VDI? No, Microsoft Teams is not a VDI. The cool thing, though, about Microsoft Teams is Microsoft Teams is hard, and especially if you're in the Azure government cloud, it could do that type of work. You can actually set up, like we're looking at in that virtual desktop, you can have Teams running in there, right? But Teams by itself is not in a virtual desktop. So I could be running Teams really on my BYOD, my personal device. I would not have my personal laptop hardened at the level to do Teams at, Guillermo. That's why I need to be doing Teams in my data center, or once again, Azure or AWS, because they're going to be hard. And we're going to look at those checks inside that data center is going to be hard to make sure Teams is validated to do that type of work. Let me know if that makes sense to you, Guillermo. I was rambling a little bit. It's a little late, but now Teams by itself is not. I think Teams, you need to be running in a virtual desktop. You can run Teams. Once again, that'll be hard. Let's see what my man 317 said. Let's go to the next slide real quick. Then we'll get to the question. What my man said. Did you always have a thin client when you're doing fair work, or did they rely heavily on remote wiping, tracking? No, it was weird. 317. No, I had a DoD laptop. So I basically just had a DoD hardened laptop. Once again, they made sure it's STIG. They made sure the OUs inside of Active Directory had all the hardenings in there. We're going to talk about that. So I barely really use a thin client, to be honest. Now, they relied on the remote wiping and tracking of that. And we're going to get in there because that laptop, once again, was hardened. It was tracked. It was being logged. Once again, they can remote wipe it. The IP was tracked, so that IP can only get into certain locations inside DoD. So now thin clients just became popular, I think, over the last 5 years. Now, I did some audits when I was at DoD. Those third-party clients, they were having me log into thin clients, which I really liked, right? So once again, components of architecture. Typical virtual desktop consists of 4 tiers: client access tier, virtual desktop, and client application tier. The client tier includes thin client devices, laptop, desktop. Then the end user employs to access their desktop with the virtual desktop. The access tier consists of entry points to the virtual environment. The accessing tier, which we looked at, we're going to look at again, includes gateways, web interface, authentication servers, session managers. This tier brokers connections between the client tier and the virtual desktop tier. The virtual desktop tier contains images residing on servers and data centers. Other components within the virtual desktop tier includes management console, database, virtualization components, published diverse virtualization resources and hypervisors. The virtual desktop is built using a modular approach to components. The client application tier, not pictured, including that are delivered to the end users via the virtual desktop. This tier will not be addressed in the memo of the application level, which we're actually going to do, right? So the security of the virtual desktop, what's the risk? The client tier device can be operated from a remote location, such as a public space where physical securities are inadequate. Since information travels over the network within the agency cannot control security, aka the internet, users can potentially store FTI locally on a thin client or removable media by escaping the confinement of virtual desktop using guest to host operation. FTI or PI can also be printed locally if the virtual environment is not configured securely, right? And we're going to dig into that. There's no printing from the virtual desktop. So the virtual desktop are prone to virtualization specific attacks including hyperjacking, in addition to traditional threats such as viruses, Trojans, man-in-the-middle attacks, keylogger, rootkit, client-side attacks. They're a target against client-server devices. Security events auditing is more complex and cumbersome in a virtual environment. Log correlation can be difficult to accomplish, leading to undetected security incidents. The last one is internal resources that were not previously accessible from external networks are vulnerable to new threats from a trusted client device. Right? The entrusted client device is your BYOD is your personal computer, right? Your personal laptop. So let's see if there's any questions. These are the requirements. Now we're going to talk about the requirements you need to happen inside your VDI to make sure it's okay. Let's see. No, it makes sense. Just wondering when they start preventing access to DoD systems if you're accessing from a home computer not provided by DoD. For us, the ones I worked on, you never could because we're looking for a certain IP address. We're looking for a certain MAC address, and you got a VPN to get to it, Guillermo. So it was almost impossible for you to get your private PC on when I worked there on your DoD network. Now, once again, if you go through the VDI once again has the same security set up to get to a DoD network, right, to the tunnel. But the VDI, all those IP addresses are scoped to go through the VPN tunnel to get to a DoD network. So now, like I said, it was when I worked there, it was almost impossible. Once again, I got your VPN, we got your MAC address, we were using static IPs or reserved IPs, and you had the VPN, right? And you had to have the proper VPN software. Then in there, I think they had keys on your laptop to make sure you could get to VPN to actually get to it. So once again, Guillermo, I barely really saw a non-DoD computer get to a DoD network. So let's look at some of the individual requirements that they're looking for to get in there to see what's going on. So let's keep going. Mandatory requirements to utilize desktop provides FTI to a customer. The agency must meet. My little light at. Sorry about that. Potential weakness identified in section. Environmental segregation. The virtual desktop components should be segregated so that the boundary protects can be implemented. Access controls are granularized. Access control systems must specifically be configured to address the complicated nature of environment. This ensures only authorized clients that conform to agency security policies are permitted to access the VDI. That's some of the things I was talking to Guillermo about. The secure configure components with the virtual desktop and access tier. Configure the hypervisor management console and other virtual desktop components using secure configuration guidelines. We're going to drill down into that. Managing user privileges. Least privilege principle must be strictly enforced in a virtualized environment, right? We always want to be least privileged. We don't want to give people too many privileges so they won't get themselves in trouble, right? So once again, limit the functionality provided by the desktop. Configure the virtualized desktop to provide functionality only required for the operation. Non-essential functionality components must be removed. We always got to have the MFA on. Users who access FTI remotely must use MFA authentication to validate their identity. Audit all privileges administrative function. Privilege and administrative functions must be recorded by the system. Security events must be reviewed regularly, at least on a weekly basis by security personnel. Session confidentiality integrity. FTI must be transmitted securely using end-to-end encryption, right? All of that stuff is basic and fundamentals and what's happening. Let's see what my man here talking. Just shout out to Fabino. Hopefully I'm not messing you up. Hello from Brazil. One of my good friends is from Brazil. He's trying to get me to go to Brazil. So I think I might do that out. Shout out to Chris for joining me. I'm at 36. Shout out to my man. We were in the study hall for Simply Cyber. We were chopping it up. So glad he could join me. So once again, those are the mandatory requirements for a virtual desktop, right? And the reason we're talking about virtual desktop, a headhunter reached out to me. He wants me to use my government laptop to do government work for multiple clients. That's actually a felony, right? I'm commingling data. And if I'm doing Indiana work and Ohio data got that Indiana laptop hacked, Indiana will be very upset, right? So that's why we're talking about using VDI. Then we can have multiple workspaces on, be able to divide the client up without commingling data. That's really a no-no in DoD or any of the three-letter agencies. You should not be commingling work, especially from different clients. The clients don't like when you commingling their work with other work. Once again, that's it. And we're going to drill down the client piece, the access tier, virtual desktop, internal network. Once again, that could be AWS or Azure. I would actually do it in the cloud. They handle a lot of that hardening especially from a data center perspective. It's a shared responsibility. AWS and Azure got that covered. And we're going to dig in and we're talking about those requirements: virtual desktop, virtual profile, virtual application, virtual disk. And of course, we know the hypervisors chopping it up. So Once again, just keep throwing your questions in there. Let's see. Yeah, 317. I thought that's insane. Was this recruiter from a well-known company? No, I've never heard of him. He was from a medium-sized company, but the crazy thing is 317 is supposed to be a security company. So that's the insane part about it. You asking me to co-mingle work. It's like, dude, you gotta know. So basically I told him, let me know. I'm I don't know if I want to work that hard anymore, but I was going to set this up, and I'm actually going to do more live streams and set up a VDI inside AWS using multiple workspaces where we can hire harden to do IS work, FISMA work, or any of that type of work, so we can understand it. And two is, for me, I think this is the future, right? That way I don't want to have 19 laptops here, or 2 or 3 laptops, or even one laptop, where if I want to do work, I can just log here with my personal machine, which I think is pretty hard, but it's not at that level. Once again, go through the VDI, get that certified and validated. Me and Chris Whitlock was just talking about assurances and 3PLs and how you get it audited. Had the 3PL come out and audit my AWS setup, give me the salute and the certifications and assurance that I could do that type of work. So that's kind of what brought this live stream on. So I just want to talk about what's that like in real life. And two is AWS has a cool setup. So just kind of keep digging into those requirements. Once again, you know how we do it. If you got any questions, drop them in the chat. I'm checking on my LinkedIn, but I think I'm struggling on LinkedIn. I didn't feel bad because some of the big YouTubers, their LinkedIn was locking it up too. So it didn't make me feel bad. But let's keep rolling. Once again, if you got any questions, just drop them in the chat and we get to them. So we saw the first thing in there was the environment segregation. So what does that mean? And let's be clear. A lot of this stuff is going to be, if you're doing DOD work or NIST work or CMC work, these requirements from a VDI perspective is going to flow to all those other compliances, right? I think this is standard baseline stuff for government work from a virtual desktop in the cloud. Major VDI components such as database applications, servers, and management must be installed on a dedicated platform to prevent unauthorized access. If design validations form or pilot form exists, there must be adequate separations from the environment. If the agency supports more than one virtual environment, each virtual environment must be independent from each other one to prevent single point of failure. AWS and Azure has automatic failover and DR. You can set that up with a click of a button. We'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to look at an AWS architecture again. The virtual desktop must be protected logically in an enclave so the VDI resources are protected and segregated from other enterprise IT sources. The devices that have access to FTI must be further segregated in a logical enclave to provide the most granular protection for FTI. Internal facing access tier components such as web server interface servers must be placed behind filtered device in a DMZ. So for all the web team and network guys, even though you're setting it up, you got to set up in a traditional networking, right? Which is a DMZ, a web tier, and an app tier. The cool thing is AWS and Azure lets you set that up with a click, and they actually have that as part of their base setup. So they actually do that super easy for you. But once again, environment segregation. So you as a NIST or GRC person needs to understand networking from that part, right? What is a network segment? What is a VLAN? What is a web tier? What is an app tier? What's a database tier, right? So those are components you need to set up correctly so you can once again get it validated from a 3PO and be able to do that government work. So let's see what my man 317 from a shout out from a network engineer point of view. I see static IPs being a liability unless it's internally. Are those required on the STIGs? Why do you consider it as a liability? I know from a network standpoint, there's a lot more work, right? For me, static IPs, the reason I like static IP, I can say this network, this laptop, I know has this static IP or reserve IP, so I know I'm only letting this laptop into my network. Now we know we can spoof IP address. We know we got MAC addresses. I know we still VPNing. So when you VPN a lot of time, you get that static IP to come down from your network to your laptop. So I guess Axel from I guess he just from a network engineer. Let me get your thoughts on why you think that's a liability. Are devices set up to log in within the time frame, like a 12-hour blocker? Um, no, but we've been talking about that for 30 years. We want to have really that's what we're trying to go to, Todd. We call it just-in-time security, meaning, and you can set that up inside Windows Server pretty easy. This user should be working between these hours and only these between hours, or this 6 or 7 hours. Ty, a lot of times something would happen and those people need to work on the weekends. So we haven't quite got there. I think we're getting there where in the future we want you to, and I'm trying to set up that with AWS. You check out Ty as a DBA, he's working between 12 and 4 on this block of servers. This is their cider block. So you just check out to work on that block for those 4 hours. Then that access goes away. But we're not there. That's really where we want to get to is dynamic access so you can have dynamic security. So if a hacker tries to get you at 3 a.m., even if they took over your machine, they wouldn't get anything because, like you said, you're not designed to be working those hours, so it wouldn't even let your laptop on. I think we're trying to get there, Ty. I haven't seen that a lot. I haven't never seen that ever, really. Gives more specific attack surface compared to random limited DHCP. The only problem is, and I agree with that, but my thing is, gives a more specific attack surface compared to a random limited DHCP. But I guess my thing, Axel, is the DHCP usually gives you a range that's bigger than my specific IP because I'm giving you one. When you log into DHCP, I can get anything from 10 IP addresses. Now, they don't rotate that much, but it will rotate. So I think your attack surface is bigger with DHCP, Axel. Let me get your thought patterns on that. What's up, RG? Shout out to RG. Always give me comments on my video. Shout out to him. I think it gives your attack surface bigger, Axel, because I can have anywhere between 10 IPs or 100 IPs, whatever's in that DHCP for my subnet or division, Axel. So to me, once again, I think that's true. It would advertise. Yeah. So I think static, but I know for y'all, doing static is a lot harder, right? So I'm a static guy or reserve IP. So that's why let's be honest. I've been doing that for 30 years, Axel. So if you got something a little newer, man, I'm up for it. I've been doing that for 30 years, man. Shout out to the old people. That's me. Let me keep going. So let's get to the access control part. All devices, laptop must be evaluated for compliance. Right, we're going to make sure the patches up. We got antivirus being allowed to connection to the VDI. For example, Zen Desktop Application Control implements the requirements. The agency should ensure that the following access control are implemented in VDI. Access to each resources must be granted explicitly and prevent unauthorized access. Anonymous and public access must be disabled. Administrative and mounting traffic must originate from an authorized IP range. So shout out to my man 317, right? That's DHCP. I want to say specifically this IP address. So PBO is only going to be doing DBA work. PBO is only going to be doing networking. 317. He can only get to the Cisco routers. I don't know what he's Juniper, right? He's not doing any other work. So his laptop can only get to the Cisco stuff. If he tries to get to the database stuff or the DBA stuff, number one, alert should go to the security group. And number two, shout out to 317. I like him, but he's not a DBA. I should block his IP address from getting there. A lot of times we let you get there, you just can't log on to it, right? My thing, if you can now, I can try to do brute force attack. I could try to do a rainbow attack. So that's why we want to do IP, static IPs, and we specifically can block that user. Administrative control must be restricted to authorized personnel only. We're going to talk about the NAC, or device authentication must be implemented to ensure only the authorized thin client device is permitted access to the virtual desktop environment, right? So usually with the NAC, we're going to get the VPN, right? So, and two is your NAC. We're going to check your laptop to make sure your operating system's up to date. Your virus control is malware. If any of that's not up to date, we're going to block you. Either we're going to make you update it or you got to bring your laptop into the office, right? Your laptop's not secure. right? So those are the things we're trying to implement on the VDI and see what's happening. Let's see. Yep. So 317. Let's see what my man said. So from my understanding, our service member who access Microsoft Teams, right, 2FA, AK fax with the cat card from their home computer are in violation or do their DTS as well. No, I don't think they're in violation. But they're not in violation, Guillermo, because I think they're using from their own computer. Yeah, if they're using their home computer, I think they would be in violation. All the guys I know had DoD equipment. So if they're doing their home computer and they're going straightly into Microsoft Teams to 2FA, even with their CAC, or doing their DTS as well. Well, that's two things right there. If you're doing DTS, you're really not touching any classified data in there, Guillermo, right? So if you're just doing is DTS travel work? It's been a while since I've been at. So two, let's talk about the classification of the data real quick, Guillermo. If you're doing your laptop and you're doing 2FA and using your CAC, most home computers don't have a CAC reader unless they ship them a CAC reader. That's why a lot of times they want to send them government equipment because, I mean, you could definitely get an external CAC reader. But if they're touching DoD FISMA data, I would think they would be in violation. Now, if you're just doing your DTS and you're just doing some basic work, you're not talking, you're not touching any classified data, Guillermo, I don't think you're in violation. Now, if I think you're touching FISMA data, which is classified as high or medium, I think you're in violation. So it makes me think most of those people work from home are not touching, once again, classified data. And two, Guillermo, that's my interpretation. A lot of times people give waivers. I've seen generals okay stuff over my head that I thought was wrong, Guillermo. You know, DOD, I'm going to salute the flag. Now, one thing I just did, I showed you why they were in violation. Now, a general could accept that type of work and override me. So, Struggle Security, let me know if you want to come up. I'll drop the link earlier if you want to come up, Struggle. Shout out to the $20 for Struggle Security for the barbecue fund. Even though PBO is supposed to be on a diet in 2024, he's trying to get in a little better shape. Shout out to him. Let me know if you want to come up, Struggle. Or if anybody wants to come up, let me know. I'll drop the link. So, Guillermo, I would ask what type of data they're touching. DTS is not classified data. So I think that would be okay from that particular point of view. Good New Year. I appreciate that. Stay safe in these cybersecurity streets. Shout out to Christopher Whitlock with the strength. Let's keep going. See, shout out. Throw a honey pot in the mixer because brother Michael, I actually had a very heated discussion. I told people we're not mature enough to do a honey pot or honey net because remember, you letting them in your network for some reason. If you don't have that locked down, and your honeypot got them in your network and they got out of that, brother Michael, nah, man, we ain't that good. I ain't never doing no honeypot or no honey network. We got enough problems, Michael. You trying to set me up. You trying to set me up. Nah, brother Michael, we ain't doing that. That's a setup. That's cool. Shout out to her. I understand, man. Take care of the missus. Take care of Miss Struggle Security doing big things. I know you're a busy guy. It's all good. It's all good. So we gonna keep going. So we talking about virtual desktop, travel. So that's not confidential work. So I think you'll be okay with that, Guillermo. Once again, we talking about the classification of the data you're touching, right? Travel, that's not even PII, right? That's public almost. You traveling, right? Unless you're a dignitary, right? That's public. So I think you're cool with that. I think if you go up the chain. Financial, once again, I used to work for DFIs with the financial. So we had your checking accounts, your bank accounts, your wife checking. We had your kids a lot of times, money, right? We were moving, depending on what I forgot what base you were on, we were sending money to. So I think that would be more PII work. So let's keep going. Was looking at struggle security content. You have no. We're gonna work together, man. I'm on his channel and we on his and two, he more OT than I'm more GRC, right? We have discussion because he don't like the Stigs, man. I be trying to lock him down, Christopher. We not a he don't like the Stigs and I love Stigs, so we good. Shout out to him. Shout out brother Michael laughing at me. Shout out to him. BBL, did you take your AW? Oh yeah, I have the I have 4. I'm kind of a compulsive, like, oh my God, and dude, March is almost here. Shout out to Struggle Security, wishing their family a safe and happy new year. Now, I have the cloud practitioner, I have the AWS associate architect, I have the AWS developer, I have the AWS security, and I took the AWS ops dev and I missed it. I think I got 17 and you need 720. So that was my failure in 2023. So I need to take that again. I'm studying for the CISP big dog. So now I'm an AWS fan guy. So I'm in there. So yeah, I have all those certs. Let's see what's going on in there. How much of this applies to typical business? Looking at the pricing, it like a good option for business, including small. I think it's really for mid-size and big businesses. I think it's actually a low cost. I think the setup of virtual desktop in AWS and Azure is a little heavier lift than most small companies won't look at. So most people are actually doing it because of compliance. Like we talked about all the time in the GRC study, all is the federal government saying you got to do this compliance. So I think that's why most people I know doing that is for those compliances. So shout out to Aiken. So let's keep going. So let's talk about the security of that virtual desktop. They talk about the schisms. You can use the CIS benchmarks. You can use the STIG benchmarks. Shout out to Struggle Security. I know he don't be feeling the STIGs, but once again, schisms is CIS plus a few. Once again, CIS benchmarks are there. I'm a STIG guy, so those are the 3 I mainly use. If I do any, a lot of times I usually do the schisms. Once again, it's the CIS. They're a lot lighter than the STIGs. Most people, shout out to Struggle Security, they frown up when you say STIG. So additionally, there are several configurations that need to be adjusted in order to be more compliant. Installing antivirus on all platforms, supporting virtual environment, repositioning your existing firewalls or additional boundary protection so the internal resources are adequately protected, changing the default ports of your web server, removing any sample sites. Once again, I used to do Apache and Tomcat, so you always delete the sample sites, encrypting all web interfaces using HTTPS to ensure confidential integrity of the web traffic and torrent, ensure SSL certificate and current. And all encryption, once again, must be compliant with the latest version of FIPS 140-2 going to FIPS 140-3. That's actually encryption that's sent to the government and been verified, right? Just because you're doing AES or you got AES from 3 dudes in the garage, are they actually implementing right and doing it right? So that's why we want to get that FIPS 140-2, 140-3 in there. Let's see. Can you use PAT for static IP address for multiple devices? I don't know what PAT is, Ty. What is PAT? Like I said, I've used it. And to be honest now, my old deal is shout out to 317. I just tell him to set that up. I don't do that anymore. What is PAT? What using static IP? No, I don't like the way that sound, Ty. Using PAT for static IP. No, I want one IP address on one devices. I don't like to use star so you can have one certificate on multiple web servers. I don't like that. I need that certificate. So if that certificate is hacked, I need to be able to trace it back to that one web server. I need that IP static to be traced back to one device, right? Because we're going to talk about that. We logging into Splunk. We logging into AWS CloudWatch. We logging into Elk Cache. So I need to be able to track that IP, that cert back to one server, one person, and one laptop, right? So I can track that down. At least it's point and click. Facts. Let's see what my man. Port address translation is more for the flow of web traffic to specific facts. No, that's true. Part of the NAT too, right? For the port address translation. Let's see, NAT, probably what he meant. Probably. That's a lot of times, even through the NAT, though. That's why we want to pull down that static IP address so we can trace that NAT back to that one IP address on that laptop. So let's keep going. I'll drop. Let's see. I'm gonna drop the link. Give me a little minute. I'm gonna go a little further, and I'm gonna drop the link. Glad Miss Security, Miss Struggle Security doing okay. Once again, those are the schisms. That's the STIG. That's the CIS checks. Those are the individual. What am I going to click on this database to make sure it's encrypted? What am I going to click on and make sure the SSL is it's not going to negotiate down, right? Those are the exact settings you need to do on an OS database, Cisco router, right? So to make sure it's secure. Managing privileges, we know we're going to do the role base. This is my favorite one. System administrators should not be able to authenticate directly as root. They must use sudo. Obviously, you're doing sudo, you on a Linux box. That's my OS of choice on the server side, but PBO is trying to do a lot more Windows as he gets older, but I love that sudo. You just can't log in directly. You got to sudo and get those root commands, only the ones you need. I used to be a web admin, so I had about 10 root commands I had to do, right? So I would only get those commands in my sudo list. Restrict users from installing software, only allowing end users to have permissions sufficient for a daily business operation unless business justification. Must be restricting configuration files, log files, and automatic scriptings that are placed on a virtual machines. Preventing unauthorized access from end users with access control lists. Must protect virtual machines, files, snapshot, rollback files from unauthorized access. These files can recreate the user sessions and sensitive information can be disclosed, right? So if you can roll back from a setting, from a snapshot from a database, or even from a VM, in that VM the person might have had been working on sensitive information, FTI, PI, nuclear codes, right? So we want to make sure we're managing the user privilege correctly. Limited functionality, right? We want to do least privileges. FTI must be protected and remain under the agency control. There are a number of common parameters and options that can enhance the security of a virtual desktop. Transferring FTI from the desktop to the client's devices. Client clipboards redirects allows users to copy information from the virtual environment to a local workstation. Copying clipboard functions such as client clipboard redirections must be disabled to prevent unauthorized access and disclosure, right? So we're going to make sure if you using a clipboard, it ain't coming down to your workstation, right? Disabling any client drive mapping and USB drives. You're not walking out with a database on a 10 petabyte USB drive. Disabling shadowing to ensure sensitive data is limited to authorized users only virtual desktop. Disable unnecessary functionalities such as the capability to deliver a multimedia information and support collaboration devices. Disable printer configurations so that FTR PI cannot be printed locally. Virtually configure virtual desktop to prompt for the user credentials before attempting to resume disconnected session after network timeout. A lot of times if the network times out, if you click and say restore connection, it won't ask you to put your credentials in, but a man-in-the-middle attack might get your session and try to re-enable it. But if you force them to do credentials, right, they won't have your credentials. Remove anonymous or public accounts from your virtual environment. Public resources must be restricted to authorize and disable snapshots and rollback functionalities if they're not a requirement, right? So that's just a few of the virtual desktop requirements you need because we're going to make sure you lock down. We're going to make sure we don't get hacked. Make sure we don't end up on PBO site saying your organization got hacked. How the heck do you remember all these rules and protocols, PBO? A lot of times, I don't remember them all, to be honest. A lot of times, once again, we talked about you download the STIG settings and they give you those connections, right? I download the CIS benchmarks. They give you those in connections. And a lot of times, those are automated checks. You run them, and AWS will configure them for you, or Azure configure them for you. And you can scan, and they'll tell you what you're missing. But a lot of times, I do remember them all because when you've been doing it for 20 years, and I've probably done 5 or 6 BDI assessments, you just kind of memorize it after you. And a lot of times, too, as I bring up stuff like this and be like, okay, now what are these requirements? But now when you pull down the STIGs or the CIS checks, because they change every year and they add some and they take some off, to be honest, Aiken. So now it's just me just going over 'em. Let's see what my man Chris said. Let me back up there. I work with a limited sudo, use only select commands area, very good input place. Oh yeah, gotta do sudo. That's one of the checks, especially in any Linux environments. Especially if I'm not the only person who had root that I ever worked for was the essays that actually ran the Linux. They the only one had roots. Like I was a web DBA and an app DBA, and I just got the 10 or 15 commands I needed to do my job. Shout out to Mr. Governor for joining us. Given enough time, I'll be PBOF breaches playlist. Shout out, shout out. Does being a good pen tester take a long time? If so, is it worth pursuing? I don't think that's really a Alpha Cyber question, but no, I don't think it is, and because Alpha Cyber, I think pen testers specialize in certain pen tests, right? So when you talk about pen testing, and I worked DoD, you have to have a professional pen test every 3 years. We would get a professional organization, usually one of the big four. We would actually put them in a conference room inside of our network, and we would give them some low-level passwords to see if they can east and west, see if they can escalate the privileges. Shout out to Struggle Security, see if they can get on our printers, attack our printers, and east and west, and once again elevate from our printers. A lot of people attack printers a lot of times, and I think Alpha Cyber said that time because you can do red team, OWASP, web server attack. Some people specialize in attacking a printer, then go onto your Active Directory and escalate. So I think it's a specialty thing in there. So I don't think it's a long time, but once again, I think Alpha Cyber, and I've seen you on his channel a lot. I think that's his question more. Alpha Cyber with depth, that's more definitely in his wheelhouse. I don't think so. I think you need to specialize in something, but you know, you want to be decent in everything, but specialize in 15. I've done GRC for 15 years. I really specialize in DoD and IRS, right? So those are the things I could kind of see off the top of my head, Ty. So that would be my thing. But reach out to Alpha Cyber, cool guy. No lie, 4 of my family members bank being on PBI at the last week. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Banks and mortgage companies. So that is crazy. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Shout out to Axel. He's keeping me honest on the network side. Like I said, I do that's my weakest point. But once again, from a STIG, I've done a lot of stuff with Cisco doing the checks. I don't know if you know my man Network, bruh. I was always giving him the STIG of the day when he used to do videos. If he was talking about a particular protocol, BGP or something, so I would give him the STIG of the day for his particular networking, what he was working for today. So once again, we talking about multi-factor, the AC17 from the NIST family. Multi-factor must be implemented for remote access to FTI. Authorize users to have access to it. Remote access and virtualization technology allows users to access FTI from remote location. Threats of shoulder surfing, network stiffing, password cracking. We talked about some of these decreases and the assurance level of the user identity. Traditional challenges response-based authentication mechanisms are no longer sufficient to prove the identity of the remote user, right? And we talked about that from zero trust, right? So the things you want to authenticate is really the person, the user, and the network traffic. And I talked a little about this. When you use AWS, they have inside their network traffic, you can actually put a token coming from their programming app saying, this token is supposed to be in this network when I'm connecting to an AWS. So I'm validating the session, I'm validating the user, and I'm validating your workstation, right? Once again, your workstation being, is it up to date? Does it have virus protection? Does it have the right reserved IP and static IP? So those are the 3 authentications of a user, and to make sure those are valid before we let you connect to the network. Once again, that's zero trust. Allow the privileges administrative functions. Configure the virtual desktop to record our privileges administrative functions. For a list of security events must be recorded. Session confidentiality and integrity. We just talked about the session a little bit. Enable stronger encryption for the traffic, FTI transit or PII, as well as management traffic between the client tier. We always talk about FIPS 140. That's encryption that's been sent to the government and they know they're doing it right. So we know auditing, right? If you use the Splunk, LCache, as it logs, it's looking for certain TTP attacks, right? They move a certain way. Shout out to Struggle Security. Are you tagging a printer and going to Active Directory, right? That could be Huggy Bear, one of them Russian tag. They had those cool names. China. So if we talk about the MITRE attack can look inside your logs to see if they see a TTP, which is a nation state. So it can alert you to say, hey, it looks like somebody's in your network doing these preconceived attacks that we have patterns for, right? So that's why you want to make sure you log everything and keep that moving. So let's keep rolling, see if there's any questions. How do you create a successful study plan? That's a good question. For me, because I've been in the game, I need to think about that a little bit. For me, I know what I'm trying to accomplish in the next level. For me, everybody know I've been doing GRC, was the cloud. Everything's happening in the cloud. So that's why I got those AWS certs, and I'm doing videos so I can do insurance and policies and procedure for a cloud setup, because it is different, right? So then to me, it's kind of like, okay, this is what I need to study for this particular cert. This is the gap in my skills. So this is how long I think I need to study before I take that cert, right? A lot of stuff in the cloud is the same, but there's usually 3 or 4 new things because it's in the cloud, right? So I am in the cloud is a little different. Some of the tooling, me getting comfortable with AWS CloudWatch, me getting comfortable with trust policies in the cloud. So what's that gap that I can kind of do with that gap, kind of what I do for assessment? This gap, it's going to take me this long to fill, so I need to study it this long to be able to take the test. But hell, I was supposed to take CISP last year, and I'm struggling with that time. Oh, I meant that for how many one-to-one IPs. I meant that for me. Oh, I mean, yeah, I don't, yeah. Um, Let me shout out. Let's see. We both was right. Pat is with the NAT. I don't mainly set up opt-in these days with IP managers. Oh, that's true. That's true. I gotta. I believe that's a 317 tie. But you're right. A lot of times is if a client's coming in, right? We're like you said, we have a certain amount of IPs that are outward facing that a client can use, and multiple clients can pull those IPs. But two, when they're logging in, we usually give them a cert key, right? Our public cert. So when they log in, if they're moving files, right, even though it's not on a IP because it's an outside client and not an outside employee or outside consultant. So like 317 is when we give them those outside IP, we give them the cert. So when we log in, that cert's going to validate that that person or that client's supposed to begin to our network. Then two is a lot of times from their side, right? They have an IP range they're using to connect to our IP ranges, right? So they say, okay, these are our IP range from our public company connecting yours. So we're going to use our cert and their public IP range. So we want to see our cert from their public IP range before we let them connect to. So that's how we link them up, right? But if they're an employer or a contractor that's going to work with us every day, or we expect them on our network every day, we're probably going to have them connect VPN and give them a static or reserved IP, right? A vendor or a client versus a contractor, or we call it staff augmentation, meaning even though they're contracted, they're with our staff every day. So we're going to give them a reserved IP and probably give them an agency-owned equipment. We both right. Part is not. I don't facts on that. Let's see. They're using VPN. So you say, yep. See, look. So if they're hitting building ones, they say, yep. That's how we do it. So we're going to give them a VPN. But like I said, if it's a client, we're not going to give VPN. They're going to give them they're going to give us their IP range. We're going to give them our public cert. So when they're kicked in, that IP range and their public cert is going to connect to our private certain, we know it's good to them, then we'll let them in. So, and I talked about that really, and I'm actually going to do a SFTP, AWS and that SFTP. We're going to talk about VPNs. We're going to talk about public and private key. We're going to talk about IP ranges and the best way to set those up. And part of that is somebody called me and said, how could I only connect to United States IP range inside AWS? Now, if you're using AWS firewall, it's $3,000 a month. They got that built in. But if you were just trying to set it up on AWS ACLs inside their network, I couldn't figure out a way to do it. So I think I figured out a way, but that's a separate video. But that kind of correlates with, once again, we're talking about IP ranges, public versus our part, using VPNs versus, like he says, staff off versus clients, and how often do you connect and what level we letting you get in our organization. So let's keep going. Let's play this other video real quick in here. Oh. I think it's that one. Let's do. Let's see. Oh, shoot. Oh, I closed the wrong thing. Let me play this video while I get my slideshow back. BBO struggle streaming in here. Let's see. That's the old one. So we still rolling though. Let's get that in there.
Setting up Amazon Workspace's Thin Client is easy, and in just a few simple steps, you'll be connected to your AWS end-user computing services. Let's start by ensuring you have all the included items. Connect the wired or wireless adapters for your keyboard and mouse, and optionally, your wired headset and webcam to the USB-A ports on the hub. Then connect the secondary monitor to the HDMI port. Connect the power adapter to the power port. Now, you can connect your hub and monitor to your Amazon Workspace's Thin Client. Use an HDMI cable to connect the HDMI port on your primary monitor to the HDMI out port on the Thin Client. Next, connect the USB-A plug from your hub to the...
Look how small that is, right? That's a Thin Client. I used to work with a large company that sent this out. They had agents and stuff. And I went to a couple customers that were using the previous version of this. It was a little bigger, but
the USB port on your Thin Client. Now, connect your Thin Client power adapter to the power port. Plug the power cords into a power outlet. Once powered on, follow the on-screen instructions to connect to the service. If you are connecting via Wi-Fi, have your password ready. First, select the language. Then select your keyboard type from the options shown. You will now connect your Amazon Workspace's Thin Client to your network. Once it scans for available wireless networks, select your network from the drop-down list. The final step is logging into your AWS end-user computing desktop using the instructions from your IT administrator. Once logged in, you can access your application on your remote desktop service.
So look at that. That is super small. So I think I'm actually going to purchase that and set that up. That's just so clean, right? Especially, and two is if you set it up for a client or working with a client, I think that's the recommendation there, right? It's just smooth, and because most of your stuff is web-based anyway. Chris is cool. Surprising is that it's a static IPs. No, that's true, but you got to remember is you still got a VPN, right? So that's going to hopefully validate. And two is remember checking the health of your workstation, right? So we checking your OS, we checking your malware, we checking your, right? And two is, once again, we checking your static and your MAC address. But you're right, and I think you said it in there, defense in depth. But no, you're right. If we connect in, but if you connected and you swapped it, number one is when you connect to our network, if two people got the same IP address, it's gonna know that and throw a flag. Number two, once again, we got the MFA and the VPN, right? So that's in depth. And we checking the health of your workstation. And we're checking when you log on, we're gonna put the AWS cert inside that session to make sure all that's together. So definitely defense in depth. So think client 195, do it. Yep, facts. Super cheap, super cheap. I think it's cheaper than that. Only about two. Yep, 100%. So yeah, so that's why that's a hot thing. And two is, and we talk about if you wanted to do that from, and you a GRC guy getting in there, so you could do multiple clients because you could have multiple workstations with different clients and really different security levels, right? You can have one for IRS, one for DOD, NIST, one for CIS checks. When you log in your virtual desktop, the virtual desktop would tell you what workloads you could work in at a different security compliance level for any one of those. So I think that's one of the benefits. And I'm going to set that up. I think I'm investing in that and just get the handle of that and just once again see what's going on in there. We almost done. Okay, so that's the AWS. If that's their page, let me make sure that's showing. So that's workstation. You can configure it right there. Administrative setup with the Amazon workspace. They got the workspace web, and the AppStream 2.0. And you can put it in the desired region. Your region could be closer to the client. We want to do CONUS, which is continental US because we're doing government work. Administration copies of activation codes for the console and emails, and users enter activation codes to register for the device. The administrator manages, monitors, maintains workspace within clients and fleets, controls access to the device and management devices. Right there, that's what's a little cute. And right there, management means what checks do we have in there? And we were just looking at the requirements that would go into that, right? So. Once again, this is kind of a high-level AWS identity provider at the bottom. You can use Active Directory. You can use Octave. There's a ton of things in it. So that's your admin setting up through your AWS console. Once again, these are thin clients, but you could use the workspace AppStream or web. Right, web is just browser-based. Workspace, you could actually get a Windows desktop AppStream if you're doing streaming work, right? So those shows you those thin base. And in there, right, you log in using AWS CloudWatch, and encryption, you use an AWS key manager, right, to control the encryption keys and how that works. And at the top right there, you see management, the environment, device, and the software updates. We still got to make sure we're going to have software up there in Windows OS, hopefully using Office 365. So Microsoft will be managing those for you, right? And you can run Teams on there, right, at the thin desktop level from a VDI, then that would give you the requirements to actually go from one Teams to another Teams. The other Teams will be the client you're working for, right? So see if there's any more questions. Let's keep it going. Almost done. I'm about to drop the link if anybody wants to come up. This is the AWS version of that, a little more detail. You see the Microsoft AD down there, your session keys, your streaming. Once again, your workspace is down here, your Amazon workspaces, your in and out connections, internet gateway for outbound traffic, or you can do a customer managed VPC, right? So down here, you can have a database, or if you want to keep your stuff in the database, or you run an Amazon Aurora or something down there that you want your workspaces to connect to give them actual a higher level of things they could use. I would just use the workspace and just just use it from a browser perspective. I probably would try to put Teams on there. That way I could do my spreadsheets up there on the desktop, send those spreadsheets or those scans to the client, and just make sure these are, once again, CIS, FISMA, Schisms, IRS Put 1075, an individual workspace for the client. once again, for that particular security, and each workspace will be for an individual client, which will be a different desktop. Right, and once again, getting those desktops, we saw the requirement. We would be MFAN, make sure we have the proper security. Once again, that's using Octus and Radius with Active Directory. So that's a little more advanced setup for, I need to share that screen. My bad, let me back up. PBO a little tired. Let's see. I thought I was sharing that. Let me unshare this and go back. Oh, maybe I was sharing the right thing. Let's see. Let me go back. Make sure I got it. I think I was. So that's the small scoop cube with the workspace setup. Like Chris said, you can do 50 machines for about $2,000 on that setup. So then let's look at the other, a little more advanced setup. That's what Active Directory, using NIST and the NAT gateway going into your VPC. We're talking about the NAT. So you have it. So you would go in there in the cloud if you wanted to save it to the database. Maybe you have more web servers that you want your workspace to connect to that you can control. I would just keep all my stuff up there. Once again, I'm GRC, so I'm not doing any development or coding that I would need to use that complexity of a workstation. But let's keep going. This is once again is a little more complex. You see Active Directory with Okta. We know Okta, even though Okta got hacked, but Okta with the Radius and AD agent. All right, so if you want a little more security, you see the EC2s down there if you want to spin up some additional servers coming from your workspace. And once again, connecting to those for some reason. Once again, that's makes your attack surface a lot bigger, so PBO probably wouldn't do that. PBO gonna drop the link and see what's other questions in there. See my man Axel always asking great questions. Like to have my network guys in there keep PBO honest. I've been considering Azure a network cert. I like the layout. All my favorite streamers use AWS, though I might, to be honest, I would pick one, Axel, but in the end, I would do both because I think most companies are going to be multi-cloud. I think obviously Active Directory, if you got Office 365 and using Active Directory, I think you're going to use Azure. I think if you're using Java development, like you said, AWS had a head start. So I think multi-cloud is going to be it. My thing is you got to pick something. So I would just pick one of them and go with it, right? I was already on AWS, so I'm just kind of standing there. But I'm definitely going to start picking up those Azure certs. The companies I work for, they're on Azure, right? So because that Office 365 moved to the cloud was a lot cheaper. A lot of people, once again, moving the Active Directory to AFDS in the cloud. So definitely, I'm gonna start doing some videos showing multi-cloud stuff where you would authenticate with AFDC in the cloud, which is Active Directory. Get a token and use that token to log into AWS using your AFDC credentials, syncing it over to AWS, so you have your OUs and your credentials. And it gives your organization and your privileges, right? And syncing those together. So I think that's the future, Axel. And I'm not even close. So facts. I'm trying to get there too. See, Mom, I thought we were programmer first GRC. I thought we were a programmer first GRC. Yeah, I did. I programmed for 10 years. Then I went to Oracle DBA. Then I started learning Java because they used to do Oracle forms and reports. They went to JDeveloper, which was Java, so I did that for a while. Once again, I did a web server and app server, which is Apache Tomcat. Once again, I was a DBA. Then I moved over to GRC because I was stigging Apache and Tomcat. So that's how I got into GRC. I started stigging the development environment and that. Then I started getting into the policies and procedures of that, right? And I started getting PSTD from stuff going down in production. So I just switched over to GRC. The money used to be better in GRC. I think it's going back to programmers with the big fangs and stuff. So I think the programming money got a little better, but security money 9 times out of 10 is a little better than programming money, depending on the industry. Once again, a lot of people know I did a video. I interviewed for AWS, and I actually end up interviewing for engineer when I actually went for GRC. They put everybody in the engineering bucket. I think it was 347 all in for with all compensation. So PBO didn't get it, but I ain't never made 300,000 in my life. So shout out to AWS, Facebook, and the big guys in Silicon Valley. They got the money, they out there getting it. So once again, if anybody wants to come up, you can. If anybody has any questions, I'll hang out a little longer. Once again, so let's just kind of recap. I spoke to a headhunter slash recruiter, and he wanted me to use the government laptop and use it for another client. And I showed some legal stuff where I think that would be a felony because you can't commingle workloads like that, right? So I think they overlooked that. So we had a conversation. So my thought pattern is I could set up a BDI if I wanted to do that work, which I don't. PBO's tired and old and lazy. But that BDI we just showed, you can have multiple workspaces. And in those multiple workspaces, you could do multiple clients. So that multiple, let me make sure I see it. Yeah, those multiple workspaces right there. You could have multiple clients in there. Each one of those is a sandbox. You can MFA in each one of those separately. Then I think you have logical separation and physical separation to do multiple clients in their VDI infrastructure. So that's kind of what made me want to talk about virtual desktops, bring your own devices, agency owned equipment, how that loops in from a NIST 800-53 perspective. GRC, we went over the requirements, right? Separation, logging, least privilege, MFA. Shout out to Axel. We were breaking it down from DHCP, static reserve IP, what I thought was the best, kind of his input, making your attack surface smaller. Shout out to Christopher. He brought it is where it's easier to spoof an IP, right? But once again, we had that defense in depth. We VPNing, we got the MAC, we got the MFA, and we got the health of your machine. I got videos talking about zero trust, how we check 3 of those before we let you in our environment. If any of those are not at the level we suspect you in, you won't get on our network, or you just get to the public stuff where you can get the handbook for the company, right? So once again, if anybody wants to come up, I dropped the link. Let me highlight. If you want to come up, just click on that. Two is I hang up. Oh, let's my man Chris coming up. What is up, Chris? How are you doing?
Good. I think the microphone's working, right?
Yep, I hear you clearly.
Perfect. Yeah, I wanted to come up and see if you could go into a little bit more depth. I'm not sure if you'll know the answer to it, but I was actually really fascinated with the thin clients. And so, like with the Amazon thin client, is that something where it just has like a minimal version of Linux with the minimal software to connect to the BDI, or?
I thought it was a minimal version of Windows, but I haven't actually dug into the actual OS. It's a minimal version of one of those. That's why it's called a thin client. So the thin client, the theory behind that is it's minimal, like we just talked about, least privileges. The only privileges really let you do is connect to the virtual desktop. So, right. So, but then you're still pushing your updates if it's Linux or Windows, but it's so stripped down. It's really like a bastion host locally, right? Then that lets you get into your, even if it's Azure or AWS. So it's going to be minimal, but that's a good question. I need to dig into that. I thought it was Windows, but I'm not 100% sure, to be honest.
Yeah, I was kind of curious because looking at it from like a GRC standpoint, I'm sure there's some type of risk that's involved even with a thin client. Obviously, it's going to be a lot less. But like if that device has the connection information, then I'm curious on how that's protected. I'm assuming it would be some type of encryption or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's encrypted. If you looked in, I think I touched them. Yeah, because we kind of went on what that client would have. So they got the proper encryption. It's going to be fixed because AWS is really setting it up to do government work, right? So it's going to have FIPS, it's going to have the encryption, they're going to have the updates. So it's set up to do government level work because AWS want that business, and they get a lot of that business. So no, it's definitely set up for that.
Yeah, I think the way that everything is going in the market, this is going to become more and more popular because, especially looking at the cost of this just through Amazon, and I'm sure Azure is the same. The cost is not bad from a business standpoint, especially for the security that you get.
Oh yeah, this I know a lot of bigger clients were using that because if you had agents or just people doing help desk type work and they just taking calls from your clients. And a lot of people are hiring remote work to do it because they want them to work on multiple clients. And a lot of times is they don't get their they don't get their laptop back. So this is the way to
All right.
go. Right. So it's a sunk cost. And a lot of times I don't think they expect those to get now if you pay $1,000 for a laptop, right? You trying to get that back. This cube one I think you had the price in there. I thought it was 145, but it could be 195. I thought it was 145. So probably end of 2025, it's gonna be $100, man. So
Yeah. And then
so that
also it's based on how many you buy. So the more you
facts.
get, the cheaper it is. Because
Yeah,
I mean, these
100.
things are probably $20 to make.
Yeah, and I
So
think yeah, and even for the remote workers, I think it's gonna be for all the workers pretty soon. They're gonna start buying these for at your desk inside corporations even.
yeah, especially at the cost, it's going to become a lot more common.
Yeah, most of your apps now are web apps anyway. So you're gonna just use a thin web app, and when they bring up the web browser, it's gonna connect to this. That's gonna connect to your AWS or Azure infrastructure anyway. That's gonna be up there with your VDI desktop. So that's definitely gonna be the wave of the future, especially at that price point.
Yeah, I need to invest more in these cloud platforms.
Yep, because you gotta get better at them. Me too. Let me get this one quick question. Off topic. How long would it take to get control of a social media account back after being hacked? The SEC. I think it depends on who hacked it and how they hacked it. Uh, some social media, they just assume that it's sunk cost. They don't even let you get it back. I know people got hacked on Facebook. They just had to create a whole nother account because they were trying to show their driver's license to Facebook. But I think a lot of times they just like, hey, your fault. You got to start a new one. What you got any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, so I've seen a couple different accounts that get hacked, especially on X or Twitter. And there's a popular one that got taken over just a couple years ago or less, and it was taken over for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
There was one very popular one I'd like to find the link for, but there was a person who owned a very popular tag for Twitter, and a hacking group got control of the Twitter handle, and then I think they ended up charging him like $60,000 to get it back.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was like one of the most covered in media that I've seen. But I mean, they had it for like a week, and Twitter said that there was nothing that they could do about it at the time.
Yeah, a lot of times they just like, hey, it's on you. So
Yeah,
which I think is crazy. But I don't know. A lot of times too, that's why they giving you those questions. They giving you MFA to reconnect. They giving you another network account that they can email and let you connect to. So they give you a couple ways to try to make sure it doesn't get hacked. So, but a lot of times it's on you. RG asked me, what advice do you have for studying for the CISP? I was supposed to do that in 2024. I just use the regular stuff. Let me switch over real quick. Is I've got an account on CISP, and they have some nice free study guides. Let me make sure you can see that. Then the other thing, one of my buddies used to pass it is where's that at? I thought, oh, there it is. This is what I'm using. I can't say it's successful yet because I ain't passed it. Secure gives you a bunch of, and it does so does CISP. They give you a bunch of a test bank to what they think is out there and what the questions is. And a lot of people use that Secure or RG. So that's what I've been studying. My buddy said once I start getting 85%, I'll be ready. So I've been getting 85%. They got different levels. They got one is, I want to say pro and hard. So I've been getting like 85 on pro and hard. So if I keep doing that for a week, RG, I'm gonna get it. So I don't know. That's how I've been studying. Those two is what I've been using RG, but I haven't successfully passed. So that's kind of what I've been using. So let's go back to that. But once again, I'm gonna switch back. Make sure it comes up. Is once again, I think thin clients, the future, I think definitely from a GRC perspective. Because a lot of times when you have people's vulnerabilities on your laptop and you're emailing them back and forth, I would get nervous one time. I had a colleague of mine. He accidentally sent the wrong findings to the wrong client. I was like, oh my god! So you got to be careful. So I think workspace VDI, because usually the client has the VDI, so they let me log into their workspace and do my GRC in their workspace on their virtual desktop. So all my stuff gets saved on their virtual desktop, so they can look at it right there. So I'm not emailing anything. All their stuff, once again, is right there. Because a lot of times when I do stuff, they're putting their findings. They're giving me their findings on their VDI system, so I don't have to worry about losing it, or if my system gets hacked. Right, I'm in their sandbox in their VDI, so I actually like working on customers. It's a little cumbersome. It took me a while to get used to it, but long times out of 10 is um, I'm looking at their spreadsheets, I'm looking at their Nexus scans, so they're giving me their documentation. I'm reviewing their policies and procedures that they're putting on their virtual desktop. I'm not downloading, I'm just looking at right there through my PC, once again in their sandbox. So I actually like working like that. So um, that got me thinking I might just set my own stuff up. Even though it's my workspace, I would just have them put stuff in their workspace, and I would never download it to mine. Once again, they would just give me their scans, and they're filling in the spreadsheets. I'm interviewing their people, taking notes on their desktop 9 times out of 10, which is in a spreadsheet, or I'm using Teams inside that virtual desktop, using all their tools. Once again, inside their virtual desktop, that's approved to do FISMA work. You
Yeah,
want
and
to
I think
chime in?
everything moving over to thin client is actually a benefit for GRC because it really simplifies our work
Yeah.
because it's all centralized at that point. It makes it a lot easier to check the checks and balances, it seems.
Yeah, then two is once you get your, you were talking about that. Once you get your spreadsheet and how you're gonna do it, and your artifacts up in there, you just making a copy of for each one of those for your client. All right. So then once you get them up there and you get them scanned and they're secure, you won't be uploading and downloading. You just be making copies and picking and choosing what you want to send a client from your toolbox of things that you're using in assessment. If you're working for the big guys, Arthur and Anderson Booz, they give you their methodologies and their tool set, right? So once you get them in that workspace, you just give them to the client back and forth with their scan. So I'm hanging around. See if anybody got any more questions. You got anything you want to hit on, Chris? I know we were talking about different things inside the study
Oh yeah,
hall,
there's
but
multiple different things. Yeah, on that sec thing, we don't have to go to too much depth about that, but I did find an article actually that talks about Jack Dorsey, so the previous CEO of Twitter and the founder of Twitter.
okay,
His account was actually hacked back in 2019,
I remember
and
that.
yeah, and so it ended up having to do with SIM jacking, which is what they are suspecting happened with the sec account. So it's probably going to be the most common for these higher profile accounts, I'm assuming.
And see, that's the thing, and people think I'm crazy a lot of times. Is it's easy for you to use your phone, but it's easier for you to get hacked. So I tell a lot of people is for that convenience, I would have an iPad or some had a little more security to, especially when you're an executive. Using your phone is just so risky. Let's see what my man Guillermo said. So yeah, so that's me being old. I do very little on my phone. I
Well,
don't log in my bank account on my phone. There's just certain things. I don't read my company email on my phone. I just VPN and do my work, right? So I'm remote, so a lot of times is I'm a workaholic, so my work laptop's on my dining room table. It's up, so if somebody email me, it pings. I'll be eating a sandwich and going there and answer it at 9 p.m. Right? So, but I'm not on my phone. Go ahead and chime in on that, Chris.
yeah, I was just going to add that, yeah, it's already been known that using SMS for your 2FA is not a very good method because of the SIM jacking. It's something that's pretty easy to fake. So having an actual dedicated client for it is a lot better, whether that be like Google Authenticator or Amazon has one as well, I believe.
Yeah.
So having an actual client for that is very, very good.
Guillermo, I'm a gloss myself is I'm finishing up a membership. I'm calling my freshman membership. And Chris has been on me. Shout out to Chris Whitlock. He been telling me to get on that. So I've got half of it done. So Guillermo, I'm hoping to have it done. No, I'm not hope. I'm gonna have it done by the end of the month. It's gonna be 8 to 10 hours. And part of that GRC, it's only gonna be $4.99 a month because to be honest, y'all gonna be shaking it out and helping me making it better. So I'm gonna charge $4.99 a month, and in there I'll have assessments. And me and Chris talked about it. We talk about each other, and there'll be a lot of it comes from me going to FairRamp. They have a ton of sheets. CMC has a ton of sheets. There's a CIS has a ton of sheets. So I pull for each one of those to come up with my toolbox. But I'm hoping to show you that toolbox and actually run through an assessment, even in my $4.99 membership, where we would talk about looking at policies and procedures, looking at I think I did one on onboarding and incident response in my freshman for $4.99 a month. What we're talking about using assessment. And the other way, and Chris saying it is, I'm using Teams, and Teams has a whole lot of tools to use for GRC. So I think people using spreadsheets or they trying to buy some. With Teams, they have things called SharePoint lists, planners, just a ton of tools I'm going to use as part of GRC because a lot of people gets to use Teams by default because they have it at work. So that's kind of what I'm building my membership on. It's going to be super low cost because I'm going to build it out. And two is a lot of people, especially here, support me. So once again, $4.99, just a little of my time. This be $4.99 a month. And once again, I'm gonna make sure I have at least 10 hours out there before I charge you $4.99. You can get the whole 10 hours the first month and cancel it. But that's what I'm trying to get done, Guillermo. And shout out to Chris. He's been pushing me. Every time we talk, he's asking me, when is it done? Now, I think you're giving an easy way out. No 2FAs coming. No, that's true. I'm hoping two-factor will be common now. Anything I deal with is going to have 2FA, and any client I deal with, I tell them 2FA or MFA is a must, though. But keep us up to date. I'm getting it. But shout out to Chris. We do a GRC study hall every Wednesday. So I'm out there, so they're usually pushing me, and a lot of people been asking me for it, Guillermo. So that's my thing. That's not what I will. I appreciate you, Natasha. So, and two is I'm gonna get it where we're actually gonna do an assessment on a fictitious company, so we can show you how to use those sheets. And inside AWS, they have System Manager. It does scans for you, so that's what I'm gonna use to scan, so you can see it. Aiken been asking me for that membership forever, probably a year. Shout out to Aiken. That's why I give you the eyes. So now I'm getting it done. I got it halfway done, Aiken. I got to go to an oral surgeon tomorrow, but I think I'm off on Monday from MLK Day. So my goal, hopefully, if I'm not too, hopefully my jaw's not too hurt. I got 3 days to finish it, right? So I'm gonna give you a good strong 10 hours. And Chris knows I got a ton of content out there. I just need to go through and clean it up and make it condensed so we can get it in there, right? So long story short, I've got the outline, so I'm gonna read to you the outline. Hopefully, I'm gonna have a printout next time. Introduction is me talking about the course. We're gonna talk about why NIST 800-53 is the 800-pound gorilla. We're gonna talk about IT auditing, assessing, and GRC. What does that mean for that particular domain? I'm gonna go over the 20 families from NIST, talking about the policies and procedure on each one. That's the second part of that. The third part, we're actually going to do an onboarding and an incident response procedure. How will we audit it, and what are we looking for in that procedure? The second part of that is NIST 800-A, which I believe is the process of how that works, right? Assessing, monitoring, how we're going to customize and do the overlay. B is how we go from low, medium, high. It shows you the particular ones. Then that's 5. 6 is the technical part about that. And me and Chris talking about 3-tier. We shout out to my man 317 from a networking part from GRC. What is a 3-tier network? How do we do a vulnerability scan? We're going to touch a little bit on zero trust. How do we make sure the health of the machine? How to make sure the health of your username? How do we do a NAC? How do we look at the session part of that, right? From zero trust. And I think that's going to be the whole, I'm calling it the freshman class for $4.99. Those are the particular 8 things we're going to touch in there. So go ahead, Chris. You want to chime in on anything?
Yeah, no, I really look forward to it, and I like the fact that you're going with membership in particular because I'm assuming we're also going to have a little bit more direct access. So
Yeah,
you're going to
100%.
have a lot of time invested,
Yeah,
and
that's true. Fine. Go ahead.
it'll support you as well because that first 10 hours, that's just the first section. I could
Yeah.
definitely see you putting together a lot more, and it's going to be really great.
I'm gonna have 4 level. My goal is, and people talked about it, and my man Alpha Cyber, he does offensive security. Shout out to my man Gabe. I'm gonna recruit those guys. Those are the red team professional pen testers. So when we set up our blue team, and we talked about the STIG and CIS, the junior part, we're gonna harden that. The senior part is gonna be the blue team versus the red team. We the blue team. Alpha Cyber and Gabe's gonna be the red team, so they're gonna have to hack our stuff to see how good we really are, see how good PBO. So that's kind of want to do. So I'm gonna get a red team and us as a blue team. Then hopefully we can watch them through the logs as they try to attack us. Then part of that too is that TTP, certain attacks they're gonna do, like if they're scanned sequentially, which I'm sure Gabe would do because I'm gonna tell him to do, right? That's a script kit. If somebody's scanning sequentially our IP range, we're gonna take that IP and just block it automatically inside AWS. That IP scan sequentially all our IPs. Oh yeah, we're blocking that IP. So you're gonna have to spoof another IP. You can't use that one anymore, right? So we're gonna show how to use SOAR, which is security orchestration. How do we block script kiddies and get them out of the way? So those are some of the things we're gonna be working on inside the membership.
Yeah, force fun. Yes.
Say that again.
So Axel, super chat.
I saw it. Shout out to Axel. I just highlighted. Shout out to the course fund. I appreciate you. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, let's get him working on this harder. Yeah, and there's nothing else that's out there like this, and that's why I'm so excited about it because it's from actual professional industry experts for people like myself and other people who are just breaking in or just newer to the industry to really understand the tools from a real world perspective. And I mean, it's going to be really amazing.
Natasha, the study hall is simply cyber. He has his Discord. It's from 7:30 until 10. We usually go 2 hours, so it's usually Wednesday. And a lot of times those guys just pop in there, Natasha. And two, is if you're in there, just ping me, just at me. 9 times out of 10, I'm just on my computer. So a lot of times I pop in and one of the Chris's are in there. We just start chopping it up. So the official time is, and that's really Chris's thing, is usually 7:30 on Wednesday. Then, like I said, I usually pop in and see if those guys got any questions for me. They're building a website with a lot of cool resources on it. So I just trying to add value. And I remember when I was kind of trying to learn, so I like to get in there and help those guys. Because when I was first learning, Chris knows it's a lot of stuff to pick up. It's a lot of stuff to pick up. And that's one thing I'm gonna try to do is what is the roadmap for NIST 800-53 to try to learn it, and what should you build on top of each other. So I'm thinking about that too, because I just kind of did it on on-job training by brute force, and I was struggling. I had 15 years in the game, and I still was struggling. So
yeah, that's where like your course that's going to go through a lot of that stuff is going to be so valuable. Because it is very complicated, especially for somebody who's just getting into the industry.
And two is you and the other Chris helped me out from the questions y'all asked. I kind of know what people are kind of struggling. I know each person, but each one of y'all kind of with your questions were asking me. I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. And a lot of times, I guess I've been doing it so long. I was like, oh yeah, this is how you do it, But once again, it took me 20 years to figure that out. So I just take it for granted. Yeah, I just took it for granted because I just been doing it so long. Well, Chris, I'm going to thank you for joining me. I'm going to shut it down. Everybody have a nice hump day. I appreciate it. for the safe procedure, my man. I had it done before for a wisdom tooth, but now you right. Long story short, I scared my son. I told him this is the safe deposit box. You know where all the life insurance is at. So you know, Chris knows I do risk for a living. It's only 2%. Something's gonna happen, but sometimes things happen. So I want to make sure he had all the proper documentation. Shout out to Axel Foley for the 5 on the course fund. Shout out to my man Struggle Security. Hopefully the wife is doing well. No pressure coming up. You know, that's my guy. So once again, I want to wish him and his wife safe baby coming in March. I know the wife putting honey-do lists on him. So shout out to my man Struggle. I'm definitely gonna enlist his help on mine because he's doing his website. I probably share that the next time. I probably start writing on this website. So once again, his red team versus my blue team. PBO's team gonna win, but he's definitely a red team penetration OT specialist. I don't want to pigeonhole him, but his definitely is attacking the printer than trying to escalate. So we gotta make sure our printers are locked down. I'm gonna have some printers in there in Active Directory, so we gotta make sure we got our printers locked down in Active Directory, so he can't be pivoting from the printer. So that's one thing we're gonna be doing in the capstone. I'm calling it the capstone senior class. What we need to get done in there. So, Chris, I appreciate you. Appreciate you. I'm gonna shut it down. Everybody
Thank you very much. You have a good evening.
All right. Everybody have a good weekend. Ping me, ProfessorBlackOps@gmail.com. Everybody tell if you reach out to me, I need 48 hours to respond. Sometimes though, you might want to just comment on the video, go check your Gmail. Sometimes PBL be a little late, but I'm definitely gonna get back to you. Shout out to Natasha, shout out to Brother Michael, shout out to Aiken, always on the membership, shout out to Axel, shout out to RG, shout out to Guillermo, great currency, shout out to Scamp Diesel, shout out to Chris, shout out to my man Ty, always checking on me. Shout out to Mr. Governor, shout out to NC Worker. Shout out to Struggle Security. Shout out to Brother Michael. We're going to give everybody a shout out. Came through. Calvin's always in the box. RG, I'm out. Everybody have a nice weekend. I'm out. I'm weekend. It's hump day. I'm off tomorrow. Once again, getting some molar pool. I'm out. Once again, everybody have a nice day. I'm out.